All right, so get ready, because today we are going deep, deep into the life and the work of Bram Stoker,
The man behind Dracula?
the mastermind behind the iconic vampire tale.
Yeah, Dracula has captivated readers for over a century.
For over a century, and it's fascinating to think that it almost didn't see the light of day.
It's true, he spent 7 years
7 years.
painstakingly crafting this novel, researching everything from Transylvanian folklore to
But this
real train schedule.
real train schedule.
For Jonathan Harker's journey, talk about dedication.
Oh my gosh, the dedication is unbelievable.
It really is a testament to Stoker's meticulous nature.
Yes, and it makes you wonder how these conflicting forces shaped the creation of Dracula, but
We see glimpses of that throughout his life, even
his first letter
his first letter to his idol, Walt Whitman,
told women.
sat in a drawer for 4 years
4 years.
before he finally sent it.
Wow.
It's as if he wrestled with his passions, almost hesitant to unleash them fully.
Interesting contrast, isn't it? This incredible discipline when it came to his work. He had a certain hesitation in his personal life. But let's rewind back to the beginning, to his early life.
Well, he was born in Dublin
In Dublin, Ireland.
in 1847,
In 1847.
and his early years were far from ordinary.
Far from ordinary.
He was bedridden for the first 7 years of his life.
Really the first 7 years?
Yes, shrouded in a bit of mystery, but undoubtedly crucial to understanding his fascination with the macabre.
Right.
And his mother, a captivating storyteller, regaled him with tales of cholera outbreaks
Oh, wow.
and chillingly premature burials.
Oh my gosh, imagine that.
Yeah, imagine the impact of these dark narratives on a young, imaginative mind confined to a sickbed.
It's like the seeds of Gothic horror were planted right there in that dimly lit room, fueled by his mother's stories.
Absolutely.
And then it's no surprise that his later works often grappled with themes of illness and death and the blurred boundaries between life and death.
Exactly. But thankfully, Stoker eventually recovered and went on to have a surprisingly active youth. He really blossomed at Trinity College, excelling not just academically,
Right.
but athletically as well. He was a star rugby player
A rugby player.
and a gymnast.
What?
You wouldn't picture the future author of Dracula as a sports enthusiast, would you?
No, not at all.
Quite a surprising image, especially considering his other passion during this time, Walt Whitman.
Walt Whitman, he was completely enamored with Whitman's poetry.
Writing him those intensely personal, almost obsessive letters.
Those letters are fascinating.
They really are.
They reveal a fascinating dimension of Stoker's personality.
Yeah, he was drawn to these larger-than-life figures, both in literature and, as we'll see, in his professional life.
Yes.
Remember that delayed first letter to Whitman?
The 4 years?
It's almost as if he was wrestling with the intensity of his admiration, unsure how to navigate those feelings.
It really makes you wonder about the inner workings of his mind.
It does.
He clearly wasn't one to rush into anything carefully, considering each step. But speaking of taking steps, let's move on to his career, which took a rather unexpected turn initially.
Well, despite his passion for writing,
Yes.
Stoker began his professional life as a civil servant in Dublin Castle.
In Dublin Castle?
Not exactly the stuff of vampire tales, is it?
Not really.
Yet even in this seemingly mundane role, his meticulous nature shone through. He even published a book about the duties of clerks.
Attention to detail.
All right.
But thankfully, his evenings offered a bit more excitement. He became a theater critic,
That's right.
writing for the Dublin Evening Mail and even pioneering the concept of next-day reviews.
Can you imagine?
I can't even imagine writing a review the next day.
The pressure of having to deliver insightful critiques on such a tight deadline.
Wow.
It speaks to his discipline and his deep understanding of the theatrical world.
It does.
And it was this passion for theater that led him to a fateful encounter that would change his life forever.
You're talking about Henry Irving?
I am.
The legendary Henry Irving. That's where things start to get really interesting.
That's where things get interesting.
What was it about that meeting that made it such a pivotal moment in Stoker's life?
It was more than just a chance meeting. Irving, the biggest theatrical star of the time, was so impressed by Stoker's glowing review
Yes.
of his Hamlet that he invited him to dinner.
Wow.
That single dinner sparked a decades-long friendship and a professional partnership that would deeply influence both of their lives.
And it wasn't just any partnership. Stoker became the manager of Irving's Lyceum Theatre in London.
That's right.
This wasn't just a job. It was a high-pressure, high-society whirlwind, and Stoker was essentially running the whole show behind the scenes.
It's astounding when you think about it. Managing a theater of that caliber with all its personalities and demands.
All the demands.
Required incredible organizational skills and resilience and all this while he was writing on the side,
On the side.
getting married.
And even becoming a father.
That's right.
It's almost as if he thrived on that intensity, juggling these multiple roles with a quiet determination. But how did this demanding career, combined with his childhood fascination with the macabre, ultimately lead him to create Dracula?
Well, the pieces of the puzzle really started falling into place during Stoker's travels with Irving's company.
Okay.
He finally met his literary idol, Walt Whitman, in America.
In America.
And his experiences abroad, along with the stories he encountered, began to fuel his imagination.
Okay.
And then there's Whitby,
Whitby.
the seaside town in England that became almost synonymous with Dracula.
Yes.
It wasn't just a random choice, was it?
No, I don't think so.
Stoker spent time in Whitby immersing himself in local folklore and the eerie atmosphere of the place.
Yeah.
He was particularly captivated by the shipwreck of the Dimitri,
The Dimitri.
a vessel carrying a mysterious cargo and leaving a lone survivor who spoke of a large black dog. Sound familiar?
Chills. It's incredible how he took these real-world fragments, these whispers of strange occurrences, and spun them into this iconic vampire tale. But I'm curious, did his meticulous research end with folklore?
You're absolutely right, and that's where his fascination with details comes into play again.
Yes.
He meticulously researched train schedules using real timetables to map out Jonathan Harker's journey in the novel.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to ensure accuracy, even in the fantastical elements of his story.
That's classic Stoker. He was a master of weaving together reality and fantasy, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. And speaking of blurring lines, there's a rather curious detail about an Icelandic edition of Dracula that raises some intriguing questions.
Ah, yes. The Icelandic edition titled Powers of Darkness includes a preface where Stoker claims that the events in the book are in fact true.
Wait, really? He actually made that claim?
He did.
It makes you wonder what he truly believed about the nature of evil and darkness. Was he simply trying to add a layer of authenticity to his story, or did he genuinely entertain the possibility of vampires existing?
That's a question that continues to fascinate scholars and readers alike, and it's worth noting that this claim was published during a time when the Jack the Ripper case was still fresh in the public imagination. Some have even speculated that Stoker might have been subtly referencing those real-life horrors in that preface,
Wow.
further blurring the lines between his fictional world and the darkness lurking in Victorian society.
That's a chilling thought. It adds a whole new layer to the novel, making you question how much of Stoker's own anxieties about the world around him seeped into his writing. But before we delve further into the mysteries of Dracula, we need to circle back to that pivotal relationship with Henry Irving.
You're right. Irving's influence on Stoker, both personally and professionally, was profound.
Yes.
And some even believe that his presence is woven into the very fabric of Dracula. In fact, there's a persistent theory that Dracula himself was partially inspired by Henry Irving.
Oh, come on, surely not. We're talking about a physical resemblance, or is there something deeper at play here?
Think about Irving's commanding stage presence. He was known for his intense gaze, his imposing figure, his ability to captivate an audience with a single look. Does that sound familiar?
Now that you mention it, I can see the parallels, the way Dracula exerts power over those around him, that air of mystery and danger. It does echo Irving's own charisma, albeit with a sinister twist.
Precisely. And some scholars believe that Stoker might have been subconsciously exploring themes of power dynamics and control in his relationship with Irving through the character of Dracula.
Makes sense.
Remember, Irving was a demanding personality,
Yes.
and their professional partnership, while successful, undoubtedly had its complexities.
That's a fascinating insight. It makes you wonder how much of Stoker's own experiences, his anxieties, and even his admiration for Irving, consciously or unconsciously, made their way into the pages of Dracula. But before we get completely lost in speculation, let's address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the bat in the belfry.
Ah, yes, the question of Stoker's sexuality. It's a topic that's been debated for decades, fueled by his fascination with figures like Whitman and Irving, as well as the complex portrayals of desire and repression in his work.
It's hard to ignore those elements, especially considering the strict social norms of Victorian England.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder how much Stoker might have felt the need to conceal certain aspects of himself, perhaps channeling those unspoken desires into his writing.
Absolutely. And that tension, that struggle between societal expectations and personal desires is something that resonates with many readers even today. It's part of what makes Dracula such an enduring and thought-provoking work.
It certainly adds a layer of complexity to the story, especially when you consider the intense often homoerotic undertones in certain scenes, like the one where Dracula and Jonathan Harker are shaving.
Right.
But before we dive deeper into the intricacies of the novel, there's one burning question I have to ask.
Okay.
Did Irving, with his captivating stage presence, ever play Dracula himself?
Ironically, no Stoker actually arranged a play reading of Dracula for Irving,
Oh,
hoping to entice him with the role, but the theatrical legend, after listening to the reading, declared it dreadful.
oh, the irony. Talk about a missed opportunity. Can you imagine Irving, with his commanding presence and dramatic flair, bringing Dracula to life on stage?
It'd have been something else.
It would have been a sensation, but alas, it wasn't meant to be what happened next.
Well, shortly after that tragedy struck the Lyceum Theater, a series of misfortunes, including a devastating fire, led to its financial ruin, marking the end of an era for both Stoker and Irving.
That's heartbreaking after all those years of dedication to see it all crumble. It must have been a devastating blow for both of them.
It was especially for Irving. He never fully recovered from the loss of the Lyceum, giving his final performance in 1905 and dying that very same night. A dramatic end to a legendary career, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It must have been incredibly difficult for Stoker to lose his friend and collaborator like that. How did he cope with such a loss?
He poured his grief and admiration into a 2-volume memoir dedicated to Irving, which became his most popular work during his lifetime. It seems as though writing became his solace, his way of processing the complexities of life and loss.
It's a testament to the power of writing, its ability to help us navigate the darkest of times. But even in his own passing, Stoker left us with a bit of a mystery, didn't he?
Indeed, the official causes of death are listed as kidney disease exhaustion and locomotor ataxia, a term often associated with syphilis. This has, of course, fueled speculation about Stoker's personal life and health, adding another layer of intrigue to the man behind the monster.
Well, it wouldn't be a true deep dive into Bram Stoker without a little bit of lingering mystery, would it? But regardless of the cause, his legacy lives on through Dracula.
It does.
It's never been out of print and continues to inspire countless adaptations and reinterpretations.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the heart of our exploration today, the enduring power of Dracula. Why do you think this novel, written over a century ago, continues to captivate audiences across generations?
That's a great question.
What is it about this tale of vampires, blood, and darkness that resonates so deeply with us?
I think it's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
It's a masterful blend of gothic horror, romance, and psychological thriller, all wrapped up in a story that taps into our primal fears.
You know, you're right. There's something inherently fascinating and terrifying about vampires. They represent our anxieties about mortality, sexuality, and the loss of control. They are the ultimate other, forever on the fringes of humanity, yet constantly tempting us with the promise of eternal life.
Precisely, and Dracula also provides a unique glimpse into the anxieties of the Victorian era. The fear of societal change, the repression of sexuality, the clash between science and superstition. These themes, while rooted in a specific historical context, continue to resonate with us today.
It's fascinating how a novel written over a century ago can still hold up a mirror to our own anxieties and fears.
It is.
But beyond the thematic richness, I think a large part of Dracula's enduring appeal lies in its iconic characters.
Absolutely. Dracula himself is the ultimate Byronic antihero.
Yes.
Charismatic, dangerous, and tragically flawed, he embodies both our fascination with darkness and our yearning for something beyond the mundane.
Right, and then you have Van Helsing, the determined vampire hunter,
Yes.
a symbol of reason and science battling against the forces of the supernatural. And let's not forget Mina Harker, the strong-willed heroine who defies the constraints of Victorian society.
It's a cast of characters that has become ingrained in our collective consciousness.
Yes.
They are archetypes that we continue to see echoed in literature, film, and even video games today.
It's a testament to Stoker's storytelling genius that these characters continue to resonate with audiences across generations.
Yes.
They embody timeless struggles, primal fears, and the enduring battle between good and evil.
Absolutely. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Dracula is its open-endedness.
Oh, yes.
Its refusal to provide easy answers.
I know.
The novel ends abruptly, leaving us with a sense of unease, of questions unanswered.
Like there's more.
Right.
It's as if Stoker is inviting us to continue the conversation, to grapple with the complexities of the story and its implications long after we've turned the final page. And that, I believe, is the mark of a truly great work of art.
You've hit the nail on the head.
It sparks our imagination, challenges our assumptions, and leaves us wanting more.
Dracula is more than just a horror novel. It's a reflection of our deepest fears, our fascination with the unknown, and our eternal struggle to make sense of the darkness that lurks within ourselves and the world around us.
Well said.
Wow.
Now, I can't help but wonder,
Mm.
if we could travel back in time and ask Bram Stoker just one question about Dracula, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many mysteries surrounding this novel.
So many questions.
So many unanswered questions.
Unanswered questions. But
Right.
if I had to choose just one, I think I'd ask him about that abrupt ending.
Oh, the
It feels
ending.
almost unfinished, like there's more to this story just waiting to be told. Was it a deliberate choice, or was he perhaps planning a sequel that never materialized?
That is an excellent question, and it's one that has puzzled scholars for years.
I,
Some believe that the abrupt ending reflects the anxieties of the Victorian era, a sense that the forces of darkness could never truly be vanquished.
I,
Others see it as a testament to the enduring power of evil,
okay.
a reminder that the battle between good and evil is never truly over.
It's fascinating how a single narrative choice
Hmm.
can spark so much debate and interpretation. And speaking of interpretations, there's another aspect of Dracula that has always intrigued me, those subtle and sometimes not so subtle homoerotic undertones.
Ah, yes, the question of sexuality in Dracula.
It's a topic that has generated a great deal of discussion and analysis.
A lot of discussion.
Remember that scene where Dracula and Jonathan Harker are shaving?
Huh.
There's a certain tension, a charged atmosphere that's hard to ignore.
Yes.
And it's not just that scene. There are moments throughout the novel where the lines between attraction and repulsion, between desire and fear, become blurred.
Right.
It makes you wonder how much of Stoker's own anxieties and perhaps even unspoken desires found their way into the text.
It's certainly a possibility, especially when you consider the strict social norms of Victorian England. Homosexuality was a taboo subject, and any hint of it was often met with fear and repression. It's possible that Stoker consciously or unconsciously channeled those unspoken desires and anxieties into his writing, creating a subtext that resonated with readers on a deeper level.
It's like he's inviting us to read between the lines, to uncover the hidden meanings and desires that lurk beneath the surface of the text. And that's what makes Dracula so compelling. It's a story that continues to reveal new layers of meaning, new interpretations with each reading.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the richness of Dracula that we're still debating these questions. We're still uncovering new layers of meaning over a century after it was written. It's a novel that continues to challenge us, to provoke us, to make us question our own assumptions about good and evil desire and repression.
And that's what makes a truly great work of art, isn't it?
It is.
It transcends time, speaks to us across generations, and continues to spark our imagination and challenge our perspectives. But I'm curious, what do you think is the most significant contribution Dracula has made to literature and popular culture?
That's a difficult question to answer.
It is a tough one.
As Dracula's influence is so pervasive, it's so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness, but I would argue that one of its most significant contributions is its reimagining of the vampire myth.
Before Dracula.
Before Dracula, vampires were often depicted as grotesque, monstrous creatures.
Right.
Stoker transformed the vampire into a figure of both horror and allure,
Okay.
a charismatic predator who embodies both our fears and our fascinations.
You make a brilliant point. Stoker's Dracula is not simply a monster.
Right.
He's a complex, multifaceted character with a tragic past and a haunting charisma.
Yes.
He's both repulsive and alluring, terrifying,
Yeah.
and strangely seductive.
Yeah.
And that reimagining of the vampire has had a profound impact on literature, film, television, and even video games.
It has, think about all the iconic vampire characters that have followed in Dracula's footsteps.
List that.
Lestat Angel Edward Cullen,
Yeah.
just to name a few. They all owe a debt to Stoker's original creation.
I agree.
He gave us the modern vampire, a figure who embodies our deepest desires and our darkest fears.
And it's not just the character of Dracula that has had a lasting impact.
Right.
Stoker's novel also established many of the tropes and conventions that we associate with the vampire genre.
Like what?
The aversion to sunlight, the need for blood, the hypnotic gaze, the use of crucifixes and garlic as weapons. These elements have become so ingrained in our culture that it's almost impossible to imagine a vampire story without them.
It's true. It's remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
A single novel written over a century ago has shaped our understanding of vampires and continues to influence the way we tell stories about them. But Dracula's legacy goes beyond its impact on the vampire genre.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, Dracula also helped to popularize Gothic horror as a literary genre.
Okay.
Stoker's use of atmosphere suspense and psychological terror paved the way for countless other writers who explored the darker side of human nature and the shadowy corners of the imagination.
That's true. Dracula is a masterclass in Gothic storytelling. The eerie settings, the brooding atmosphere, the sense of dread that permeates every page, it's all there. And it's not just the Gothic elements that make Dracula so compelling. The novel also touches upon a wide range of themes that continue to resonate with readers today.
Absolutely. Dracula explores themes of good versus evil, reason versus superstition, sexuality, and repression.
Hmm.
The power dynamics between men and women, and the anxieties of a society on the brink of change. It's a novel that speaks to the complexities of the human experience and the enduring power of our darkest fears and desires.
It's like Stoker took all of these anxieties, these unspoken desires, these fears that were bubbling beneath the surface of Victorian society, and channeled them into this incredibly powerful and enduring story.
He did.
And the fact that we're still talking about it, still analyzing it, still finding new meanings in it over a century later is a testament to its lasting impact. But as much as I enjoy getting lost in the world of Dracula, I can't help but wonder about what is it about Dracula that continues to resonate with audiences today? I mean, it's been over a century since it was published,
Yeah.
and yet it's still being adapted, reinterpreted, discussed.
Yeah.
What is it about this story that captures our imaginations?
Well, I think it speaks to the enduring power of certain themes and archetypes that are deeply embedded in our collective unconscious.
Okay.
The battle between good and evil, the allure of the forbidden, the fear of the unknown.
Right.
These are all timeless themes that Dracula explores with remarkable depth and complexity.
You're right. There's something about vampires in particular that just continues to fascinate us.
Yeah.
They represent our deepest fears and desires.
Absolutely.
Fear of mortality, the allure of immortality, the thirst for power and control, and Stoker's Dracula,
Right.
with his sophisticated charm and sinister intentions, is the ultimate embodiment of that duality.
He's both a monster and a magnetic figure. A creature of darkness who also possesses a strange allure. And that duality, that interplay of attraction and repulsion, is what makes him such a compelling and enduring character.
It's as if he embodies both sides of human nature, the darkness and the light, the savage and the civilized, and the fact that he's a vampire, a creature that exists outside the boundaries of human morality, makes him all the more fascinating and terrifying.
Precisely, he represents the ultimate transgression, the ultimate taboo, and yet there's something about him that also draws us in, that makes us question our own boundaries and desires.
It's like he's a mirror reflecting back our own hidden desires, our own fascination with the forbidden.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why Dracula continues to resonate with us.
Uh-huh.
It forces us to confront the darkness within ourselves, the shadows that we often try to ignore.
And it also reminds us that that battle between good and evil is never truly over. It's a constant struggle both within ourselves and in the world around us, and that's a message that's as relevant today as it was in Stoker's time.
It certainly is. But speaking of Stoker's time, it's remarkable how much Dracula reflects the anxieties and preoccupations of Victorian England.
Absolutely.
The fear of disease, the repression of sexuality, the clash between science and superstition. All of these themes are woven into the fabric of the novel.
Dracula is a product of its time, and yet it also transcends its historical context.
Yes.
It speaks to universal fears and desires that are just as relevant today as they were over a century ago, and that's what makes it a truly timeless work of art.
It's a story that continues to evolve, to be reinterpreted, to find new audiences and new meanings with each passing generation. And that's a testament to Stoker's genius as a storyteller.
Yeah.
He created a world that is both familiar and strange, both alluring and terrifying.
Absolutely.
And he populated it with characters that continue to haunt our imaginations.
He gave us a story that is both a reflection of our time and a timeless exploration of the human condition, and that's why Dracula continues to be read, adapted, and discussed over a century after it was first published.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
I think so. From Stoker's childhood influences to his complex relationship with Henry Irving to the enduring legacy of Dracula.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners have gained a deeper appreciation for the richness and complexity of Stoker's masterpiece and the man behind it.
I hope so too.
So, dear listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Bram Stoker, we leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
Go back and revisit Dracula. Read it with fresh eyes, considering everything we've discussed today.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
You might be surprised at what you discover lurking beneath the surface. Until next time, happy reading.